Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Tuesday Times Roundtable. Before I introduce our moderator, I wanted to just draw your attention to a few things that have been circulating up here. First and foremost, we finally have some details together for a event that is coming up kind of quickly to benefit one of our main community partners, CWS Miami, which is a refugee resettlement agency. So we're having a Walk for Humanity benefiting CWS's Miami office on November 4th. There are some of these flyers up in the sign-in sheet. If you're interested in participating, you can sign up through this CrowdRise platform to do the usual thing where people post on their social media, hey, can you donate $5 to this or that? And you can participate in the walk regardless of how much or little you donate, but those who donate 150 or more, and by donate I mean raise from other people, do get a t-shirt at the walk. You can also go to go.fiu.edu/donate to just make a $5 donation, even if you're not going to go to the walk or create your own fundraiser page or anything. I can't overstate enough that in addition to the issue being of great consequence to global learning in terms of making sure refugee families in Miami are set up and supported to be successful members of our community, CWS as an organization has been such a great support to our initiative at FIU. Students have interned there, students have volunteered there, and their staff have come to speak at Tuesday Times Roundtables and other events at least once a semester. So this was our attempt to do something good for them after they've made sure that all of our students through our global learning program have been able to hear from them at events like this and have internship opportunities at their office. In addition to that, well, there's Language Day, Friday, 11/3. This is a great event that we do every year, and it's a good chunk of the day in the library, and there's basically all throughout the library things going on, so check that out. The roundtable related thing is we missed the September 12th roundtable due to Hurricane Irma. It was going to be on ending child marriage in Florida. We've gotten that rescheduled, but it's not part of the roundtable schedule anymore since the roundtable schedule was full. So this coming Monday, at 2:30 in GL 220 in the library, we're going to be covering the same discussion we would have had here in the roundtable on September 12th on ending child marriage. So you can join us on Monday for that. So all of that aside, I'm glad to introduce today's Tuesday Times Roundtable moderator. Justin Taylor graduated with his bachelor's in mathematics from Northern Kentucky University in 2013 and is currently a second-year student in FIU's master's program in higher education administration. He works as a graduate assistant here at FIU at the Biscayne Bay campus Office of Undergraduate Education, where he works with the Common Reading program and several other events and initiatives. I was telling him how his bio is really short, so he also mentioned that he has a sick video game collection, and on top of that, we have 2 classes together this semester. So that's my additions to Justin's bio. Take it away, Justin.
Start. Hello. Thanks for coming, everyone. I also appreciate everyone sitting so far away from me so I don't get intimidated. That was very kind of you guys, except for you. So just to give you a little bit of a breakdown about what I want to talk about today. I envision this being a very sort of engaged conversation. If you want to just come and listen to me talk, I maybe have 15 or 20 minutes of material. So I kind of want a little bit of a back and forth. But for those who haven't been able to read the article, I believe it might be in front of you. If you can take a look, flip through it. If you haven't, the general idea behind the article is the way this new millennial generation is engaging with nonprofit, specifically around charitable giving, and some of the industry differences that have occurred in the last handful of years that seem to be different from how the industry worked prior. So I'll open this up. I'd actually just like to flip it on to you. So what's your general sense of the way, from a organizational perspective? So like obviously charitable giving works in the, I give you money, you go do a thing with the money that presumably you told me you'd do with it. Obviously that's how that works. But from an industry perspective, how do you think they go about soliciting donations? Because there's sort of a science behind it. So what do you think? Yes.
I think something that is kind of like a way to people give is the kind of exposure that it gives them. It seems like to me a lot of people don't, or they want to give, but they also want to be recognized for giving or in a social perspective for doing what they do. lot of charity nowadays.
No, that's an interesting point. So I know a lot of so nonprofits, universities do this. This is kind of common throughout. Whenever you have a handful of large benefactors that donate, let's say just $1 million to this cause, there's always like an end of the year banquet where we spend like half of that money and we just sort of celebrate them. And it gets that recognition. It gets to sort of the publicity of I did this good, great thing. Anything else? That's all that this collective room knows about nonprofits.
Can you repeat the question?
So, just generally, how do nonprofits go about? What is it that they do to solicit donations? Yes.
Okay, social media is one way. They can organize events where they fundraise.
Mm-hmm.
Just email, blast, contacts, and different other people who had helped in the past and to try to help now.
Mm-hmm.
There are just few ways of how to request help for donation.
Yes, absolutely. And before I respond to that point, if you want to cheat, there's an article that mentions a lot of these. It's very helpful for cheating. Pro tip for when you're in class too. Just skim through the readings. But yes. So, and that's it's sort of an obvious point, I think, because we have lived in this world for a decade and a half now of social media sort of driving everything. But if you think about that for a moment, it's not like the Red Cross has only been around for 15 years. It's not like United Way has only been around for 15 years. So relative to what they have been doing for decades, quarter of a century, half of a century or more, that's a pretty substantive shift. So think about what they did beforehand, before technology, and because we'll get back to that point in a minute because that becomes relevant here. But what did they do? How did you, not from the really rich CEO that has millions of dollars to give, but from the masses, the collective people, what did they do?
Well, I would think it was very, and I know this is going to come across as like something negative, but without the recent transactions, like very pyramid type of ways,
Mhm.
which is one person gets another person, that person gets
Yeah.
three people, that third person gets like
Yeah.
five people. I mean,
You tell two friends and they'll tell two friends and those two friends tell two friends. Exactly. Yes.
Cold calling or like
Mhm.
telethons or what else like the crowdsourcing type
Mhm.
of things.
Yeah.
But before.
Yeah, I don't know if this is done so much anymore, but I don't remember if it was United Way or who. But I remember growing up, my family would always get an envelope in the mail. It was like every handful of months. And there would be like a little plastic clear thing and it would have a nickel there. And then it would have a message on the front of the envelope pointing to the nickel and be like, this nickel could save someone's life. And they would send that to millions of people. So they spent millions of dollars sending nickels out. Presumably you see that, you get inspired, and then you send more than that nickel back. And it was generally very effective. But I think you sort of touch on an interesting point. So when someone from a nonprofit calls you, and let's say they're soliciting money for charity that you've never heard of before. You're not familiar with it. You don't know anything about what they do or their history or what they've done. So in the abstract, how do they get that donation out of you? What do they do? What would they typically do, or what would you do if you were in their position? Yeah. Here's what we do. Anything else? Tell you sad stories. There's always a sad story. Anything else?
They touch on home, like what's more important to you. They'll touch on that specific topic.
Exactly. Yeah, they try and make a little bit of the okay. So what is it that you're interested in? What are the things that you care about? And then there's always sort of a very convenient way of, oh well, here's how we benefit that, because generally everyone benefits everything. That's sort of if you're clever in your industry, that's sort of how you pitch it. So. So yeah, for decades you have this industry that functions off of we will tell you the good that we do. Maybe I'll call you. Maybe I put it in a piece of mail that I send to you. Maybe I tell a couple students at FIU, and then they get a table out there, and then they tell everyone. But there's sort of this pitching of the message of, here's the good that our organization does. And they have statistics to back it up. And I'm not saying they're lying. It's, the vast majority do this generally above board. But it was sort of this backwards sort of way of, we'll tell you what we do. You give us money and trust us that we'll use the money effectively. And for those who were skimming ahead perhaps in the reading or have already read it, what's the big shift on that area that's happened recently? What's the big change? Huh? Proof, yeah.
They make you feel like you are actually finding the solution, like instead of putting all the responsibility on the actual organization.
For quick show of hands, how many people in here are first-year students at FIU? Are there any? Okay, one. So yes, this will be worth explaining then. So the common reading book that was selected for this year, this guy named Adam Braun. He created a nonprofit. I don't really kind of go through all the details with you, but generally, he in his book he talks about sort of the behind the scenes of running a nonprofit. He made this like big switch from like working on Wall Street to the nonprofit industry, and he sort of brought some of those business ideologies with him. But particularly, one of the things he talked about is what he called closing the loop. And it's a sort of nice sounding phrase that basically means when a big donor gives you money, you call them back and thank them for the money. And here's the wonderful places your money went. But he created this nonprofit, I believe in like 2005-ish, kind of right at the rise of mass social media. And so he took that idea and just took it on a mass scale. So for every single person that donated to his organization, you would get so his nonprofit organization, they particularly would go into developing countries, and they would partner with local communities, get them sort of like invest in it, be the teachers and things like that, but they would put up the front money and materials to build schools in those countries. I apologize for my cough. So he would do that, and when someone would donate money, regardless of the amount, they would receive sort of whether it be an email or a nicer letter, or if they're a big donor, they get invited to, a big thing. He would let them know where their money went. So it would be, here's some pictures. Your money built this school, or specifically your money paid for the textbooks that went in this school. Here are the textbooks. That's specifically where your dollars went. And so it sort of created this idea that you could know very specifically where your money's going. And that's just not something that was really feasible for the last, because he doesn't always do he doesn't send out paper stuff of all of this. The vast majority of it is just digital. You collect those pictures once, you put them online, and then everyone whose money went to building the school, they get maybe an email blast. Here's what you did. Everyone that whose money went to pay for training of the teachers, here's what you did. So from the organization's perspective, it was actually a very cheap and efficient way to do it. Or cheap, efficient, not inefficient. It was very efficient. A cheap, efficient way to sort of do that closing of the loop. And then the next step that came from that, well, I'll put it to you. What's sort of the next maybe logical step after that? Continuing the relationship after that, but from the donor's perspective. Right now I have a system where you tell me the good that your organization does, and I give you money, and then you tell me specifically where my money went. But the next time the donor wants to donate, what might happen?
To get people involved in the cause, maybe?
Getting people involved. So yeah, there is some of those old industry practices definitely didn't die. As evidenced by every major nonprofit organization in America still has a table in the pit in GC, which is, the type of things they've been doing at college campuses for decades. But think about where the money's going. There's a little bit of who gets to decide, who gets to make decisions on where the money's going. That might be changing. Anyone? Okay, well, I'll help you out then. So imagine, let's say, and I say imagine, you don't have to imagine, they actually do this. So the gentleman, Adam Braun, that I was talking about, his company, he's got a company, it's a nonprofit organization, they build schools all over the world in a number of different countries. I think up to this point they built 460 something, 480 something, somewhere around there. So let's say they have a couple upcoming projects, and they're going to build a school in Venezuela, and they're going to build another school in Laos, and they're going to build a school in, I want to say they've done some in the Congo. They're kind of all over all the continents at this point. So you know that they're going to build 10 different schools. So, but I'm the donor. So what if I wanted a say in which school got built? For whatever, personal reason that meant something to me. What might that look like? Other than how I literally just said it. Oh, come on. Yes.
They'll personalize it.
Yeah. In what way? What does that mean, personalize it?
Use your name, maybe talk about some of your interests, maybe try to, I don't know, search about what's trending on Google search in that area and maybe relate that in the letters or something similar to that.
Well, even more than that, I would take it a step farther. So what I was saying before, there was sort of this idea in nonprofit industry that you give money toward the organization and you trust that the organization does a good job. Yes, did you have?
Oh, no, I just wanted to add to that.
Yeah.
Are you referring to like the direct impact that the donor is making, like the measurement of the direct impact? Or more so?
In a way, what do you mean? I guess explain your point maybe.
As far as what the next step is, so you get a letter
Mhm.
explaining the problem, how you can fix the problem, and then the level of measurements that are gonna take place. So like this one year you help
Yeah.
increase this amount and you help this amount of people, and we're getting closer to like our target goal.
A little bit. I'm less thinking about overall gains. Maybe I'm just not really explaining my point well. So what I'm thinking more of is sort of the next step for the industry. What's the next thing that the industry will end up doing? Shake this. One of the things that ended up happening, one of the things we found in just some of my own personal research, some reporting journalism that's been done, is the fundamental shift has been it's less give money to the organization and let the organization decide what to do with the money. Put your trust in the organization. Because instead of that, you get to decide as the donor where the money is going. So to my previous example, if Pencils of Promise is the name of the organization, if they're building 10 schools in 10 different countries, traditionally what would be done is you give Pencils of Promise money, maybe you give Pencils of Promise some money. Eric up there is a jerk, so he doesn't give anybody any money. And then someone else decides to also make a large donation. Everyone just gives it to Pencils of Promise, and then they decide where best to put the funds. But now it's, okay, we need $10,000 to build this school. We're $7,000 towards our goal. We need $10,000 to build this school. We're $3,000 towards our goal. And we need $10,000 to build this school, and we haven't gotten any money for it. So you as the donor can go flip through the individual schools. They'll have, pictures of the sites that it's going to be on, pictures probably of the community that it's going to benefit, and you get to pick which one gets the money. As the donor, you get to choose where you want to give your funds. And so perhaps, since we're here, if you're Venezuelan and you want to particularly build a school in Venezuela because you or your family have a personal connection there, you have the power and choice to do that, as opposed to donating money to build a school in a country you've never heard of, that you're never going to visit, that you have no personal connection to. The idea is to sort of make it a little bit more, and we were talking about this point earlier, years ago, whenever they would call, they would want to get to personal. So if it's the American Cancer Society, I assume they're a little more tactful than this, but presumably there would be, have you been affected by cancer? Or anyone in your life been affected by cancer? And then they sort of get that emotional connection. This is sort of the same idea. Here's some pictures of maybe like a cute kid that's going to go to the school. Oh, that looks like my cousin. I'm going to donate. That's a little overly simplistic, but that's kind of the general idea. So your response to that, your reaction to that, what do you think about that?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you think the shift happened because of individual behavior, or you think because we have information so readily available for us, it had changed the way you would see before? You have a nonprofit, so you have a cause that you're more involved into, and you have more information of how to get to that remote place. Nowadays, it's different. We have information about everything right there, so you can just start searching and pinpoint exactly where you want to get it, your money involved. And that happens because of technology. It happens because of the possible ways of us searching, more than because the millennials changed the way, and we want to know exactly what it is. It's because we do know what is needed. We'll be able to put the money and pinpoint and give you an opportunity to choose what you want.
What's your name?
Camila.
Mila, thank you for that point. That was excellent. Yes, I think you're sort of hitting the nail on the head. There's sort of a little bit of back and forth. So there's nothing specific about just the DNA in millennials that makes us want to do this differently. We're sort of a product of the world we grew up in. So yes, we have massive amounts of information at our fingertips. Any nonprofit organization that reaches out to me that wants to get a donation from me, I can Google them. I can figure out. So one of the things in the nonprofit industry, for example, that's really important is the percentage of donations that actually go towards the causes that they support. And the rest of it, and then, anytime you donate to any organization, there's a little bit of overhead. So that's administrative costs, that's transporting goods to the location if it's a transporting goods situation. And generally in nonprofit industry, if about like 85% plus of your donations are going towards the causes that you're saying you support, that or better is kind of seen as good. So I can go look up every single organization and see how much percentage of funds, how much is reported. I can look up journalism reports, and I can do all of this in the 5 minutes while I'm waiting in line to get my lunch. Which is to kind of our previous point that we were discussing. When a nonprofit calls you and says, here's the information that here's the organization that we are, here's what we do, obviously they're not going to say, and here's a lot of the times we really messed up. Here are times that we collected a whole bunch of money and we didn't really do anything with it. So for example, I'm trying to remember who it was. Somewhere in my notes in here I have this. I want to say I think it was Habitat for Humanity maybe, but it might have been someone else. It might have been United Way, I can't remember. But after the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, there was basically this large, I think it was around the next year, they spent a lot of money, or not spent a lot of it, they spent a lot of time and energy creating this drive to collect funds and funds and funds to go rebuild permanent homes in Haiti, because a lot of them had been destroyed by the earthquake. And I believe they collected in the neighborhood of like $500 million. So $500 million were collected to build basically as many permanent homes as they could in the country. And they ended up building, does anyone know, I don't know if you're familiar with this. Was that Red Cross? That probably was Red Cross. I'm going to get to Red Cross in a minute. I was giving them the benefit of the doubt that it wasn't them, but it probably was Red Cross. Does anyone know how many homes they actually ended up building? Permanent homes. They built a bunch of like temporary homes. Six temporary homes. $500 million, 6 temporary homes. If you did the math on that, it's around $80 million per permanent home. I don't know if you're in the market of buying a home at this point, because I'm not. $80 million is not a home anyone's buying. And if you're building $80 million permanent homes, yeah. And it was a giant just misuse of funds. It was a lot of ineptitude. It was a lot of incompetence. And years ago, if you were soliciting donations and stuff, you just wouldn't tell the people that. There's no way. You would never call someone and be like, hey, we're getting money to help build permanent homes. By the way, the last time we did this, we totally messed it up. Whew, we did a bad job. So now there's this sort of transparency. And with that transparency of knowing what organizations are doing, and it's true across all generations, ours is just sort of at the forefront of it because we're the new generation that has sort of, over the next 10 or so years, the vast majority of donations for all nonprofits are going to come from our generation. So we're sort of the first of this new wave. But now that we have this access and transparency to these organizations, we don't always necessarily have a trust of them. And that's true across the board. It's not just with the nonprofit industry. So for example, other places that, there was a really interesting line in here where they talk about the interests that, the causes that millennials are interested in donating to, and then particularly the type of things they don't donate to. And there was a really interesting contradiction in there. I don't know if anyone caught it or wants to shout it out real quick.
Yes.
Yes.
When he mentions that education or schools and religious are not
Yes.
anymore the priority, and then United Way just comes right after to show that they're building schools,
Mm-hmm.
and they are able to instill the focus of how to get.
Yeah. And even right in that same sentence, they talk about how one of the causes that's really important to this generation, or at least so far seems to have been, is education. Education is something that we'll say across all polls and everything, yes, I'm very interested in education, I really care about education, education is important to me. So then you would think then a school would say, okay, we do education. Would you like to donate? And universally we'll be like, no, we don't really want to. Why? What do you think's going on there? I guess I said universal. That's not fair. Obviously, we donate a bunch of money to a bunch of stuff. But we tend to donate less to schooling than you would expect.
Well, schooling for who?
That's an excellent question. Schooling for who? Where does the money go? What school does it go to? Does it go to a school that already has a bunch of money and has a really good fundraising program? So, for example, am I donating to Harvard? Where I can chuck my $20 in the bin, and I don't even think Harvard would notice that. They don't even notice that number shift. Or do I donate it to a school that can actually do something with that money, or it'll make an impact at that school? But what else? I guess I would, yes.
I would say maybe some millennials are looking for ways to donate time instead of money, maybe.
True. Vast majority of us just don't have money.
Apps that do that.
Mhm.
You know, that you could like sign up to get like updates from XYZ Foundation, and they'll like send you a link to their scheduler thing, so you can just
Mhm.
schedule yourself in to like do shifts.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Go work a table, pass out shirts, do something. Yeah, that's generally they found. It's not that our generation isn't charitable, it's that our generation's broke. So it's really hard to donate your negative dollars, as I'm sure nobody in this university can attest to. Yes.
Sorry, I just also wanted to say, I think it's like an adverse effect of like the American Idol syndrome, which is like we want to see one story and we want it packaged with like background music and like their whole storyline, and we want to connect it empathetically, like you mentioned before, that storyline that we can connect because we experienced it, because like it's out there. I think that has to do something with, when you look at it as something broad like education, it's like, oh yeah, we all struggle, I have student loans, for real, like a $40-something thousand dollars, and I think that's kind of, I think that would be a layer of it.
Yes, and there's a little bit of that. So you touched on like creating a story that we're a part of, that we get engaged in, and that we follow through on. So one of the new things, and this is something that Pencils of Promise, I think, capitalized on early on and did very well, and now it's sort of becoming more industry standard, I guess. And that's sort of this idea of don't give us the money and let us do the good work. You're doing the good work. You, the donor, you, the charitable person, you're a part of the solution. You're a part of the community that's fixing this. You're deciding where the money goes. And we're just transparent the whole way through so that you can, trust that your money is going to where you think it is and where you want it to be going. And there's sort of an empowerment that people who give charitably have now sort of, whether consciously or purposefully or not, that's sort of been created for themselves. And just because Eric and I are in education graduate classes, and that's where everything in my mind always goes back to, I can draw an interesting analogy for this. That I don't offer this as either good or bad. This is just sort of a thing that has happened in higher education. So several decades ago, the federal government started offering Pell Grants for low-income students going to college. And initially there was kind of a debate. Do you give the money to the student and then the student can go use that at whatever school they wish to go to? Or do you give the money to the institution and then the institution can spread out those exact same funds, the exact same amount goes to students, but the institution kind of decides how it goes and where it goes. And ultimately, as anyone knows, we basically decided as a country we give it to the student. The student has the money. So if I'm eligible for a Pell Grant, I'm eligible at FIU the same way I'm eligible at UF, the same way I'm eligible at Northern Kentucky University. But what happened with that is you gave students sort of this empowerment. They had the ability now to, okay, I have this money. Universities need to entice me to go to their school. So we started seeing really, really nice, very slowly built rec facilities. We started seeing really nice student centers and student unions popping up all over the country. It was sort of this competition between universities to get the students. And nonprofits have started moving in that direction too. There's kind of a competition between nonprofits that's been engendered because the people donating now, it's not that we have more money, we actually have less money, but we have something that previous generations did not. We have information. We have knowledge of the American Red Cross. I'm just going to I'll take a minute to talk about them in a second. But we had the information to know what these organizations are doing and who they're benefiting or not benefiting. And so we have sort of created this competition between them to not just offer the most efficient services, not just offer the most transparent services, because that was relatively easy to do. But now we need, yes, do you have a, yeah, yeah. But there's, one of the things that they've started to find is that there's a desire now to sort of pick and choose specifically where dollars go. And that's one of the main fundamental shifts that's happened is it's not so much that I want to give money to this organization because I care about education. It's I want to give money to this organization to build this school because, you know, maybe I was flipping through the list of schools that they could potentially build. I was looking at sites, and for one reason or another, this one just spoke to me, and I wanted to go there. Yes.
Okay, I think it's important to mention that, you know, it's not all former past nonprofits, that it's not like they don't work anymore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Any type of donations and any cause and any form of how you proceed of having the relationship between the donors and the institutions, the bottom line is helping something that they choose to. So there are different ways that you can make this happen. Okay, what works for some people might not work for others. And even inside the same generation, millennials or older people, Generation X, there are different things that might work for you. So I think we can't just use generalizations of, for instance, Red Cross, which had happened to have a few bad examples in the past, which doesn't mean that a lot of what they had helped, and doesn't mean that a lot of people who work there and do donate and volunteer also don't do a good job in certain causes. So the other thing that I have to say is it's a little weird to hear that nonprofits are competing against each other. I think there's many more causes nowadays because we have an overpopulated world and we have many issues happening. So it opens up a broad opportunity for people to get together and do something good. And for that to happen, we need to have help from donors as well as volunteers. generation that we have nowadays, we have a possibility of helping if you have money or you can give your time for it. And what the millennials did was, with their know-how and their knowledge with technology, which is one of the first real generation that came out and learn about it, and it's being more proactive about it, they use that as to build a platform for people to be more, being able to have all these different ways of being involved in donating. So I think it's very important to not just say this is the new way, is the only right way, because the old way had helped a lot, and they had their own ways of doing it.
Okay, yeah, no, I think I think the point you're bringing is next, because there's some nuance there. So, yes, Red Cross, United Way, these generations old organizations, they're not failing. Red Cross isn't dying right now. Pencils of Promise isn't knocking them off, though. That's not, Habitat for Humanity is just fine. Those organizations are fine. What I think I would offer as sort of the nuance that's important, though, is the way the new burgeoning nonprofits are functioning. Because so someone like Red Cross can function the way they do, and they probably have adopted some of these techniques in part, but they don't have to as much because everyone's heard of Red Cross. And a vast majority of fundraising and donating is, first off, just the branding and getting your name out there. So they can, some of them can ride some of that momentum. There is they do still do good work. Like, it's not like they're just this evil corporation all of a sudden. They're still a nonprofit. They still have a good mission. They've just had problems and inefficiencies. And the main difference that I would still offer is that we now live in a world where we know about them versus a world where we did not. So when someone new comes along, they sort of have to do something to compete with this older sort of monolith of a nonprofit organization. And that's what I think is that's where I think more the competition is. And when I say competition, I'm not meaning like a Amazon and Best Buy kind of competition, where one is trying to just bury the other and make it go out of business, because they're fundamentally different institutions. They do different things, and they can coexist in the same world just fine. But in terms of when you're sort of a new burgeoning kind of organization, you have to offer something that attracts people, that gets noticed. And it seemingly, and I don't even necessarily offer this as my opinion on it, but what seems to have been happening is organizations are creating sort of this experience for people to take part in terms of their donating. So one of the stories that was in here that I think sort of speaks to this, that they sort of open with, they kind of tell this story about a guy, I forget, he was in the Peace Corps, I can't remember what country he was in, and he was on a bus, and so he rode this bus all the time. And in this country, you would see people would come onto the bus just trying to solicit donations for something. Maybe they were poor, maybe they were homeless, something like that. And generally the people that get, maybe they get a little bit of money here and there, but they weren't generally successful. And according to the article, there was one woman who came onto the bus who was able to get a lot of donations from people, just like people left and right were giving her money. And it was because she was collecting money for her son's medical care, his health care, and she couldn't afford it. But she didn't just say, my son's sick and I need money. She had like his medical records. Like, she was showing, yes, he's sick. See, here's what the doctor says he's sick, and here's where it says how much money I need to pay for it, and I don't have that money. And she was generally able to get more. And it was sort of a succinct story, I think, but it sort of illustrated to this man this larger idea of transparency, the value in having a more transparent knowing where your money, and this is kind of getting back to what we were talking about earlier, sort of a choice in where your money is going. Because clearly these people, at least if they had the money to donate at all to this woman, they physically had something in their pockets to give, but they weren't giving it to the other people for whatever reason. The story didn't inspire them. They didn't, because each individual only has just a limited amount of funds that they can give. And there are just a wide array of options that you can give to. And it seems unlikely that every single person on that bus that day happened to also have like a sick son that they also cared about. Like that's just not very feasible. So he created a nonprofit where basically you can go through and you see, it provides kind of like Rolodex of individuals that you can see a little bit more of their story, what maybe some of their anticipated medical costs. Obviously the individuals have to disclose this information. This isn't just public record. But the app I'm pretty sure it's a mobile app. They formulated around the idea of you can see specifically who it is you're donating to and where your money is going. Do you have any initial reactions to that or any thoughts on that? Yes.
Well, I don't know if it's just me, but I thought that he left out a couple of factors. First of all, this took place in Costa Rica, which is a whole other set of cultural effects there than here in America, which tends to be a bit more individualistic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that has something huge to do with the fact that people were so willing to believe her story, take her credibility of like, yes, this is authentic documents, where I think here would be like, you probably forged that. Or,
Yeah. We have a skepticism about us that, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's it. There is a little bit of a difference of how the information is presented that culturally and contextually is very important. Anything else in terms of just the general idea of this app, this nonprofit, where you go through and you pick, this is probably unfair and overly simplistic, but basically you go through, you find the sick person that you want to donate the money to.
I would say, I just think about the cost that goes into, not the app itself, having an app is a very efficient thing, but the money that goes into collecting the story. Someone mentioned earlier whether it's about, the nice photo with the background music and all this stuff, and someone has to produce that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are telling the story of a mission in general, here's what we're going to do this year, versus if you now have to have someone who's going to travel to all these places to take the pictures of each individual one and write the narrative of each individual one and make sure it's presented nicely, that's a big investment.
That would certainly be a large investment. I would say there's sort of a easy end around to do around that. Probably make them submit it themselves. So instead of sending a professional photographer to these various places, just upload a picture. Some of this would probably require a little bit of verification that requires, to your point, there would be a certain level of overhead, but let's even just assume the organization is, through whatever means they're able to run with that relative efficiency that we were talking about earlier. They have overhead in the way that everyone has overhead, but let's say the mass majority of funds do get to where they're going.
I was saying, also, with the improvement of technology and information, they can even hire people there to find the stories, to give them to
Yeah.
so they don't need to
Crowdsource it out a
travel.
little bit.
They don't need to.
Yeah, the CEO is definitely not flying out to all of these places
Exactly,
and meeting the
and-
individuals.
and
There's
they-
thousands of them. Yeah, that's not happening. But I guess I would frame it for you this way. Let's say you're looking through the app and you come across two individuals. And there's a bunch of them that you come across two individuals. And let's say those individuals are me and Eric. And you want to donate X amount of money to one person. And you see my and Eric's profile. First, you just see the pictures of the two of us. Who are you going to donate to?
Depends on the good picture.
Good job. That was a smart answer. I'm over at BBC. He's here all the time. You donate to Eric. That was the right answer. Yeah? Sorry?
It depends on the quality of the picture.
Quality of the picture. So let's say they're about comparable. So you click on both of them, and it pulls up sort of a little one-page bio of each of us. What are you going to be looking for?
Emotional connections.
More emotional connections in what way?
How we relate to each other.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I have a very short bio that doesn't really give a lot of information, but it does say that I have a sick video game collection. Thank you again, Eric. And Eric has, this long bio. It talks about like his connection to his family. He's always really been interested in going to, pursuing his education, his schooling, and this is holding him back. And there's some other nice emotional touch points. And like I said before, probably they're not flying out someone every single to write these stories for us. Like we just had to write it ourselves. So fun fact, I actually wrote this very short, boring intro, and I gave that to Eric some time ago. So who are we donating to? Me or Eric?
Again, Eric, because he invested more time in writing
Yeah.
everything.
But what do we need? Does this include like what?
No one ever cared. Presumably we're both on there, so we need some amount of funds. What if I told you that I needed $20,000 and Eric was really, really close to his goal. He also at one point needed $20,000, but now he has $19,300. Does that make a difference? Who's donating to me now?
I'm still not donating. I want Eric to finish.
I'm not going to be offended. You don't have to donate me money. I'm not actually sick.
I'd like to know the severity of the illnesses.
Okay, so what we have, since no one is voting for, I have something, if I don't get this medical procedure done very quickly that my family cannot afford, if not die, I will have a very, very low quality of life. Maybe I have to have a leg or an arm or something amputated. Eric also has something bad, but he will not die from it, and it won't affect his quality of life that much.
I think what
Relative.
you're trying to say is when it comes to deciding between two cases, I guess whoever is deciding of who to donate will definitely look at your history, it will look at background or what is your need. There's many factors to choose from looking at a pretty picture or not when it comes to donation. We will definitely have to check who are you and who is he and what is your needs before just choosing from what you tell me. When you come, the decision can be made of the urgency of what you need and what he needs and who are you and what is the case. I think it's more than just emotional or who you connect with. Of course, at the end, you could come up to a decision of two urgent cases and you go towards the one that you're more personally inclined to from your culture or conditioning or ethnicity or somebody in your family. But
Sure. Oh yeah, no, I think that because eventually, now I boiled it down to just a very simplistic me or Eric scenario, but really you're flipping through a list of dozens, maybe hundreds of people. So, I don't know, how do you pare down a list like that? Well, these people come from the same community that I do. These people remind me of someone. There's those touch points, and multiple. It's not probably enough to just have one, you gotta have multiple. But a lot of that is sort of in what I think a unique difference that has sort of been had here is now there's this sort of not pitching of the general cause of donating money to an organization that will benefit people who need that money to cover financial expenses. Now we're pitching individual causes. I need to sell you, almost quite literally, I need to sell you on my story. So I need to have a decent bio. I probably want to pick a better picture. Or something that looks sympathetic. Maybe I'll hold like a really cute puppy. Would that have made a difference in anyone if I was holding like the world's cutest dog? And yeah, sorry Eric, I got a cute dog. You have dogs?
No.
Yes.
But I have cute pictures of myself with other people's dogs.
Okay, that's problematic. I'll deal with that later. So now we've created this sort of, I need to convince you of my story. And I mean, I'll get help from the organization on doing that. There's, here's sort of how to write and things like that. But yes.
It almost sounds like you're saying that GoFundMe and things like that are going to replace, or not replace in total, but co-opt some of the actual nonprofit and charity space, because you're still talking about all this happening through an organization that's helping you craft your story, but it sounds more to me like a platform like GoFundMe, where people are sharing their own stories.
Yeah.
And we might be more interested in going on GoFundMe and donating to somebody who lost their house in a hurricane, as opposed to an organization like the Red Cross that is helping people in that situation.
Yeah, and I think that gets to the previous point. It's not that it's replacing what existed before, but where what existed before was 100% the only thing, now it is not, that's not where 100% of the donations go. So there's been a shift in the way that where before this didn't exist and now it has a certain share. And yes, it's sort of built through this transparency of the organization is just sort of the platform and the medium to send the money to wherever you want it to go. Principal Promise is just the medium for schools. WOTC is just the medium for people with healthcare needs. Yes.
I was wondering, what are your thoughts on the other extreme of that, which is taking place now? Like, I call it, I don't know if that's a real thing, but I call it the mindless donations, which is like when you're at Publix and you're like, you want to donate $1? And you're like, mindfully, okay, I'll donate the $1. Like, what do you think about that other extreme that's taking place now? The one that's really not personal, you don't even think about.
Yeah. So I guess I mean there's sort of a tension there. If you're asking my personal opinion, what the decision, I guess what we're kind of distinguishing between is I know a lot about this organization. I've done my history and my research on it, and I'm donating to them in full knowledge of everything that's going on. But that takes time, and that takes energy and effort, and maybe neither have that time nor energy, or I don't know. You just like you get at the checkout line at Publix or something. Donate $1 to this cause. I'm just like, yeah, I like causes. I assume they do good stuff. Hopefully someone at Publix vetted that. And here you go. Well, I don't know. I was sort of, do you feel morally better about one or the other, or because there's not really like a which one is better?
I would like to rather than directly answering the question, offer my response to those solicitations if you don't feel like doing it. As someone who used to have to solicit them at a previous job, I say no thank you, but thanks for asking. Because what they get and what I got for years in one of those roles is all these excuses of, oh, I did it yesterday, and last time I did. And I'm like, I don't. Like,
it's a weird sort of social thing we do there. We're like, I don't want to look like a jerk, because that's a part of what's going on. You sort of spring it on someone in a public location. No one wants to be like, oh, donate to children.
Well, and it's a tool of manipulation. And I hear what you're saying. Yeah, that would be the right thing to say. But you're buying.
When you're sprung on it, it's always you have to practice that sort of response.
This is the second time Justin's going to hear me reference South Park in 12 hours. But there was a whole episode of this happening at Whole Foods. I think two seasons ago on South Park. The people that I just said thanks for asking to, which they never get, have really appreciated that. You know, I'm not like feeling like I'm not like upset that they asked me. It's just not my way of communicating.
So there you go, life lesson. But between the two types, is there one that maybe you feel better about, or you just seem to like more?
In reference to like when people are soliciting in the street for donations, I kind of think about like this person, who probably, scrolled through a long list of job applications and was like, maybe this one won't pay that well, but like I'll like what I'm doing or whatever. And so this person is donating their time
for good
to
cause.
ask you for money for the cause that they like, that is important to them. So I guess I don't know, it depends on how like people are feeling when they look at this person, the faces they're making, like the enthusiasm that they show. So it's a little different than a cashier at Publix who's like, here's your script, make sure you repeat it with each customer.
Context matters there.
Well, most of the people that ask for donations and petitions around campus are paid employees.
Fun fact. That was a dark thing I learned a little bit ago. I got really sad about
But
it.
they still have to apply for that job. Like, they have to ask for the employer to give them that position.
And then there's almost like a weird exchange. Are you doing this because you need the money and want the money? Or are you just trying to hit car payments? Or like, do you really believe in this organization? And like, you know, yeah, there's a
There's so
weird
many other things you could
social
do if
thing.
you believe in your ability to get that car payment paid.
I strongly believe in hitting that car payment on the 6th because I don't have that money in my bank
That's
account.
true with the donation people. The petition people outside of GL work for a petition company, and they just get hired by the actual causes to get signatures. So those people don't necessarily have a connection to that cause. I learned that
See,
when,
here's
yeah,
Eric
I
just
chatted with
dampening
someone.
everything. We had this wonderful cause, and you all were going to give him money for medical
Ask
bills.
that person when you were asking for your signature, what is their input?
Yeah.
Instead
Yeah.
of just repeating what it
'Cause
Yeah.
I was actually interested in one of the causes and wanted to see if whatever organization he was representing would come do. And he was like, "Oh, I work for this company that gets signatures. Our client is this other company."
So
I
we just
have to
didn't know
say that
anything.
The last three that I talked to, it was good causes.
Yeah.
You know, so somehow.
Yeah.
I wanted
And maybe
to-
the person actually donating knows more about the cause and is interested in the cause than the person actually soliciting. The person they're just a medium to get the money along or the signature along or whatever. But okay, but instead of, I guess we've sort of been focusing for the last, and this will probably be the final thing, instead of focusing on this sort of, because this is sort of the old method of doing it, right? Do you have any sort of moral quandaries around the new way? New way, as in the new thing that has sort of recently come up.
When you were talking about Mr. Adams' app, I was thinking for the longest time I thought that this should be done for taxes because like taxes are something that
Yeah.
directly impact you
Yeah.
know, so you want to choose how they apply that. But as far as for nonprofits, like it's cool to be able to choose, but then like you end up wanting to just divide that pool of money that you have more and more, in my opinion. You want to just donate to more
Yeah.
people than it is to just donate to one thing. So instead of having $25
Mhm.
to donate to cause A, you
Eric.
just donate to like 20 of those people who are under cause A, for example. So it's
Right.
like $1.50 for
There's-
each of them.
there's a sort of burden of choice that has come, and it's impossible. Like if I have a list of 100 sick people, I'm to go through and learn every single one of their stories and get emotionally invested in all of them, and then based on all of that, okay, I'm going to give $20 to this one, or I'm going to give 20 cents to all of them. That doesn't seem so.
But
There's
it's
this.
also cool to be able to see where they are,
Mhm.
right? Because I mean, theoretically speaking, you could go there to see them or spend time with them or talk to them or something. Like you don't necessarily have to donate funds per se,
Yeah.
do you? Like when it
Well,
comes to
and
those-
whatever it is. I mean, the individual organization, the way they set it aside, but I think there is this sort of interesting, earlier we were deciding between me and Eric which one got medical coverage. And even to the point of the taxes too, I think that decides, I can see the benefit of that. I don't necessarily know that I even have a good answer for this, but do we build roads in Hialeah or do we go build roads in Coral Gables? Because like there's some potholes in both of them, but I go to Coral Gables a lot and hang out, so we're going to put all the money into Coral Gables, and we're going to keep putting the money in Coral Gables. Maybe a bunch of us all go to Coral Gables a lot, and then poor Hialeah's over there just like, what about us? We also have roads. They also need maintenance. And the same thing I think applies for some of these donations. There's sort of just a moral quandary that we've created for ourselves, because I'm all for empowerment of individuals, but there is sort of this moral quandary around, who am I going to give money to? What school am I going to build? Whatever. Yes, final point.
Okay, what you were saying, I was thinking that would happen too. The Coral Gables Hialeah situation.
Oh, I
except
picked
it would be
those-
More like instead of defense spending, like education. Hopefully, that's what I was hoping for.
I consciously picked this. I've only lived in Miami about a year, but I consciously picked those cities for a reason. What little knowledge I have of South Florida. So yes, any final points? Any other interesting add-ins? I didn't want to thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I don't know if there's a final thing that you say or say.
Thank you.
All right.
for being here.
Boom. We did it.
Produced by Academic Video Services within the Division of Information Technology at Florida International University.